Welcome back. Panelists here. Amy Walter, editor-in-chief and publisher of the Cook Political Report. Former Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson. Matthew Continetti of the American Enterprise Institute. And Helene Cooper, the Pentagon correspondent for the New York Times. Well, Mike Pence, Mark Short, what'd you learn, Amy?
This tightrope that Republicans are forced to walk and will continue to be forced to walk, at least for the conceivable future. You know, there is this theory that you can have Trump without the Trumpism, right? Whatever comes next will look more like Trump in terms of who's the next leader of the party if it's not Donald Trump. Will look a lot more like him than a Mitt Romney, than a Liz Cheney. I think that's true. But the next question is, how many times will Republicans have to go back and pretend that January 6th was not as significant as it was, or agree with, or have to answer for it was legitimate political discourse, or was this a free and fair election? Was this legitimate? That puts the party then firmly, they have not, even as much as they try to, they have not been able to cut from Donald Trump.
Jay?
It is amazing to me that the RNC can label January 6th legitimate political discourse, and it's probably true that there's a lot of the Republican base that will accept that. I mean, to most of us, that's the equivalent of saying the World Trade Center didn't collapse on 9/11. What's interesting is the rank and file seems to be moving closer and closer to Trump's point of view, while people like Mike Pence are moving away from him.
Yeah.
And what the former vice president said legally was immaterial. We all know that he didn't have the power to reject the election result, but he's obviously become more assertive in his political rhetoric, moving away from the Trump base.
Matthew, and maybe I'm squinting too hard to see it, but it does seem like the more Donald Trump squeals about this, the more there are people going, we got to push back. We got to stop this Electoral Count Act. And even the RNC tried to water down, and then they came up with this, to me, a stain that I don't know how they ever get rid of. Legitimate political discourse feels like something the RNC, it's going to haunt them for decades.
And the Democratic ads write themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just see it from this program. You contrast that statement with the video from January 6th. There's your attack ad. I think the Republicans believe every minute they spend talking about 2020, January 6th, is an opportunity lost. You heard it from Mark Short.
Yeah.
They want to talk about inflation. They want to talk about masks. They want to talk about the border. Unfortunately, the person who's making them look in the rearview mirror is President Trump. And he wants to force the issue, I think, to the detriment of the Republican Party. And I would say to his own detriment, too. People forget Trump had a forward-looking agenda when he ran for president in 2016. All he cares about now is revenge.
It's pretty clear, and there's no coherency to it.
No, there's not. It's really sad. I've been thinking about this a lot in the past few weeks because I've been upset, as a Pentagon reporter, I've been focused on Russia and Ukraine.
Right.
And there's always been this expectation of American exceptionalism when you look at other societies where you see strongmen rulers, and you see a society accepting things that from the outside we see as completely crazy. And now I don't have this feeling of American exceptionalism anymore, because I think what happened on January 6th and the reaction of the Republican Party to it since then has shown that we're as easily led as anybody else.
You know, Jay, it's funny, and I'm going to draw a long line here, but I can't help but wonder our inability to get the world to follow us on a diplomatic boycott of China on something that's fundamental about sort of what we believe should be freedom bigger than financial ties. Makes me think, well, maybe the example of our democracy is not so good, so people are thinking, why are we following you guys? I mean, it's hard not to see that.
The first thing that I thought of after January 6th, following up on what Helene said, we used to say peaceful transfer of power, peaceful transfer. We are
made us different.
Yeah. Right, and made us different. We can no longer say that. I actually think that the situation with the Olympics is somewhat unique. I believe that our response to Ukraine actually has been a nice reminder of how coalitions led by the United States can respond effectively.
Assuming we're effective. Assuming the response is effective.
Well, it does. As we sit here, it does seem as though Vladimir Putin is on the defensive at the moment.
I think that's a fair.
And the coalition, I believe, has served as a multiplier effect on the pressure that can be put on him as opposed to going it alone.
I guess, Matthew, the question, though, going back to the issue inside the Republican Party is, you do have Mitch McConnell that is sort of the Bill Belichick mindset on to November and focus forward. But Kevin McCarthy doesn't have that luxury. It seems like he has to appease this wing of the party more than McConnell. This feels like this is inevitably going to continue to cause more problems.
Well, it's going to cause a lot of problems, especially if the Republicans take back Congress, as they look to be on the path to doing. Right? And right now they have no agenda. Yeah. Think about the Republican Party. The last time they put out a platform was 2016. So we get legitimate political discourse, but we don't get a platform. We don't get an agenda.
Speaking of ad lines, you just wrote another one.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
You know? And so you get into a position where the Republicans are in power next year. Yeah. All of these fights are going to come out into the fore if you don't have substantive policy to rally behind.
Well, they do have substantive policy, theoretically, which is we're going to be whatever the opposite is of what Democrats and Biden are doing, which is what, I think you raised this earlier, which is what every Republican in the Mitch McConnell mode is trying to talk about. Yeah. But many of the Republicans who are going to come to Congress, remember, they're coming because not only were they endorsed by Donald Trump, but because they sought out that stamp of approval and feel as if it is their job to take that into Congress, not to just simply be a voice against whatever policies.
Helene, I want to spend this last minute pivoting a little bit more to Ukraine in this respect. The U.S. has wanted us to take their word on a lot of allegations they've made against the Russians here. It seems as if this is a weird stance to take when the Russians do the disinformation game. We need to have a little more trust but verify here, and they seem to be on the defensive. Why aren't they being more forthcoming?
They will tell you that they're not being more forthcoming because they're trying to protect intelligence assets.
If I hear the phrase sources and methods one more time, it is such a crutch.
It is. I mean, the scene at the State Department briefing this past week between Matt Lee of the AP and Ned Price was. We all love Matt Lee. He's great, but he was completely right.
Correct.
And Ned saying, read what I said, and that's that doesn't necessarily work. But
You're just the spokesperson, right? That's not evidence.
We're entering a new phase right now of information warfare that the Biden administration is trying to wage against a master in that game, which is Vladimir Putin. But, they haven't done that poorly so far.
Well, there you go.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.